Hey there, everybody. Good to see all of you here. The Today we're going to be playing with some big cats and try not to get scratched. It'll be a lot of fun. I think that we're going to have some useful strategies for you. In just a moment, Avea is going to give us um, some information about um, the upcoming events in the nature journaling community. And the while that um, while that's going on, want to also encourage people to go print out the worksheet that Avea just put into the chat. If you haven't done so yet, there's a worksheet that goes along with this class, and that if you print that out, um, then we will be able to we're gonna that will be useful in this class. If you don't have access to a printer, um, or prefer not to use one, you'll have a chance to. So we'll be doing. So you can do some quick sketches of some of the skeletons that we're putting up there, but you might find it a useful thing to have printed out. And with that, I'm joined today by amazing co-host Vea Moore. Hello there.
Hello.
And thank you for being with us today and helping us out with the workshop. And what are some opportunities that are coming up in the wide world of nature journaling?
So, I believe that Trisha Nichols is having her bug night tonight. She goes by Insectopia on YouTube. I looked, her video's not up yet, but if you tune in at 7 Pacific, then you'll be able to enjoy drawing bugs along with her. Let's see here. On Saturday, if you live in the Monterey Bay area, then Melinda Nakagawa is having an in-person meeting. And also, what else? Oh yeah, and then Pencil Miles and Chill will be happening at its usual 3. We have the Curious Naturalist Book Club on Tuesday. It'll be our last meeting about that book, but hopefully there'll be more books to enjoy together in the future. So there'll be that. Let's see here. We have the Educators Forum happening next Wednesday. So a couple of big announcements. First of all, once again, that the community calendar has moved to the Wild Wonder Foundation's website. I recommend viewing it in Google Chrome. It's the easiest way to do that. Otherwise, if you're on like Safari, then sometimes it gives us trouble. So there's that. Let's see here. I think that Marley Piper's in the house today, and his birthday was yesterday. So so he's doing good. He had an awesome show last night at the Nature Journal show, and so he'll be doing more of those more tree climbing adventures. So Marley, happy birthday. Jack, and also our other co-host who's here today, Billy Joe. They are going to be leading an awesome trip to Tanzania very soon. And so we are going to wish them safety and enjoyment, and the wonderful crew of Nature Journalists going along with them. If you've been wondering why the theme has been Africa, that's why. And they are going to be doing some incredible work with an orphanage in Tanzania as well. And so in fact, I'm going to bring Billy Joe up here because I want us to give her applause too. So these are your co-hosts for Tanzania. Let's please give them like a lot of hearts. They're going to be doing some incredible work. So proud of both of you. And so that is happening. And then last but not least, if you happen to live in the Bay Area, Kate Rudder will be having our first official in-person meeting again on Sunday the 12th. So if there's more information about that on the Facebook, we might try to get it up on the calendar. I'm going to ask Kate Rudder, but it's going to be emotional. It's going to be awesome. I think that's everything. One more time, here is that worksheet. And just thank you all for being here with us. I'm going to hand the floor back to Jack. Thank you. But I think you're muted, Jack.
No, so oh, Billy Joe just appeared. I was about to Billy Joe, come on back, come on back. And there you are. The do you want to any pre-Africa thoughts or comments for folks? For folks who aren't regulars with the Educators Forum, you maybe haven't met Billy Joe yet, but Billy Joe is one of our co-hosts with the Educator Forum and a really, really exciting, dynamic part of the community there. So if you're not a regular Wednesday watcher, you might not know Billy Joe, but there's all sorts of fun brain going on over there.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Billy Joe. I live in Ontario, Canada. So this is pretty exciting for me. I'm very excited for the trip. I see that there's a few people in here today that are going with us. It's coming up in just over a week, so I cannot believe that it's happening this quickly. I'm very excited and honored for the opportunity. And I'm really excited to come back and share sort of what we learned with everybody. So come over to the Nature Journal Educator Forum as well, because it's really great. And we talk about a lot of really cool stuff and we kind of nerd out over there as well. So today I get to be a part of it because I'm at home today. So I'm here for the first time in this class, which I'm really excited about. So thanks, Jack. Thanks, Avea. And yeah, let's get going. I'm excited.
Excellent. Well, this is going to be a lot of fun. Thank you so much for being with us. I'd love to. The last time I was in Tanzania, I was with the amazing Marley Pfeiffer, who is on the meeting. Marley, do you want to? Are you able to join us by audio or video?
I will try. I have pretty bad Wi-Fi right now, but hi.
I'm gonna pin you as well. I'm gonna add you to the spotlight. There you are. Marley, do you have any advice for people who are about to be in a buggy on the Serengeti?
Well, maybe Eve can link I made a video. I think a lot of y'all have already seen the video that I made for preparing for a Nature Journal expedition. But so I'd recommend checking that out. Off the top of my head, my number one recommendation would be trying to think about your intentions before the trip, practicing self-awareness, and during the trip, reflecting on what your intention was. And if what you're doing is in alignment with that intention, that's great. And don't stress out. But like, for example, if you want a nature journal and fill a lot of pages while you're there, think about that. Or if there's certain species. So just setting those intentions and having self-awareness, I think, is always the first step. We don't really know what our goal is. So then we start judging our actions or whether we're doing well or what, and we don't really have a goal post. So set those intentions first.
That is really, really wise. You are currently in Costa Rica?
No, I'm back in San Diego. I got back 2 or 3 days ago, San Diego, California. Before that, I was in the Bocas del Toro archipelago off of Panama on the Caribbean side, doing a month-long intensive training on canopy access techniques. So how to climb up into the trees in the rainforest to be able to do research and stuff like that. Here is a watercolor showing me up there hanging in the trees. Nature journaling dart frogs and epiphytic orchids and bromeliads and stuff like that. My video that came out last night was all about nature journaling poison dart frogs while dangling from a rope up in the rainforest.
I've never done that. That's really, really fun. Welcome back to the States. And we're really excited about these adventures and what you're going to be doing with all of this inspiration. Very cool things going to be happening. So great to see you, Marley. And thank you, Billy Joe. And let's go. So let's compare some cats. So comparison is a big tool we use in our nature journaling toolkit. If you're just looking at a lion, it kind of looks like a big cat. But the minute the lion is up adjacent to something that is not a lion, the features of each one really start to to really become distinct. For a long time, I had this problem. When I draw a deer, it would look like a dog. And so, but then I did a study of a deer and a dog at the same time. And when I could look at them side by side, the features of one that make it really distinct really, really popped out. And that made my dogs look more doggy and my deer look more deery. And so we're going to be doing that, but not between these different groups of, dogs versus cats or something like that. This is all within big cats. And what we're going to try to do is adjust our kind of fine-tune-o-meter just a little bit so that we can pick up on the details that are going to make the lion look like a lion, the leopard look like a leopard, and the cheetah look like a cheetah. Let's go there now. I'm going to do a screen share here of my desktop. But you do want to see these lions. Oh, look at them. Look at that, look at those lions. Nom, 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 nom. All right, so the first thing that I want to do is just to take a look at how, hold on, I need to first hide a few features on my screen. Hide, oops. Hide, what do I want to hide? Hide floating media controls. Okay, there you go. And I'm working over here, good. So there's some lions. And look at what they're doing. They are riding around on an African buffalo. So this shows lion style. So lion is all about being really, really buff, so you can bring down really, really, really buff things. And so the lion is built to be stocky, strong, bulky, heavy, right? It is a battle axe. And that's different than the style of a leopard. Now, leopard style is you're going to chillax up in the tree for a while, and then every once in a while you're going to get out there and you're going to take somebody by surprise. And you're going to be wrangling smaller prey, but you're also going to be taking that stuff and then hauling it up into a tree. So this is actually, if you are to see a leopard, this is your best chance of seeing it is going to be up in a tree somewhere. So what you do when you're looking around for a leopard is you're looking for a tree that has a tail hanging down from a branch. So often you'll just kind of, if you are looking for a leopard, they're going to be all dappled with light and hard to spot. So if you want to spot a leopard, the secret is to look for the tail. Or sometimes you're looking for the leg of an antelope sticking out of a tree, or part of the head of an antelope dangling down from a branch. You see that, there's going to be a leopard somewhere in those branches up there. But when we look at this photograph here, in general proportions, our brain isn't really picking up much differences here. Because what your brain does, if you're just looking at this thing by itself, you're saying to yourself like, oh, okay, it's got a cat-sized head and cat-sized legs and cat. So if you're looking at any one of these guys by itself, you're going to see the same thing. When we look at the two extremes, the lion and the cheetah, we are then starting to see some body structure differences. Again, the cheetah, everybody knows, this thing is going to go zoom zoom and catch you. And but in order to do that, it is built to be lightweight. It's built for speed, so it's going to have an extremely long body, extremely long legs. It is skinny, it is lanky, it is not buff. And particularly interesting are, number one, it's got a big old tail, but this tiny, 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 tiny little head. The head of the cheetah just looks like somebody drew it wrong. The head of the cheetah is going to look like, if you're used to drawing house cats, if you're used to drawing lions, it is going to be so hard to draw a cheetah with cheetah proportions. But that's why today we are putting all these things up next to each other. So here's the lion, right? And I want you to sort of suck in these sort of general proportions. And so we have a big, bulky head, big upper body. Here's our elbow down at the level of our body, knee down at the level of where the body is. Let's take a look at the space between the back of the lion and to the belly to the ground. What is the difference in the thickness of the body versus this negative space underneath it? And on the lion here, it's basically half and half. So I've got my, this top part, this is all my body here. And now, granted, this is a zoo lion, so it's a little bit heavier set than lions that run for a living. But roughly, we've got those proportions. So what I'm going to do is on my little skeleton worksheet here, I have a very light grayed out. So if you're having a hard time seeing this, this is intentional because the printout is very, very light. So when we draw on top of it, we kind of get these features. The head is big and bulky. Part of that is made up by the bone, and then in here I'm going to add into it a big jaw muscle. So that's a muscle that attaches on the bottom side of this zygomatic arch that it has and goes down on the bottom of the jaw. And there's also a little cartilage frame that comes out in front of the nose. So that means that the head shape of this thing is going to be fairly big and bulky. When I block it in like that, it doesn't really look like a lion. If I want this to look like a lion, lions have this really prominent chin tuft. Look, that already starts to look a lot more lion-y, doesn't it? So you get that little chin tuft. The ear is a ball back here. And so from the nose to the eye to the ear, those are all along the top part of the head here. The eye's about halfway between those. So once I've got those blocked in, I can then start to draw in my lion. I'm going to give my lion a little kind of tear duct space here in front of its eye. There is a pad of fur or of muscle and fur underneath its eye and above its eye. I always like to kind of make my eye fit in with the head of my beast. And different individual lions will have different kind of angles in the forehead. Some are a little bit flatter, so just like some people have different shaped noses, this line here, this negative shape, will be different on different individual lions. There's a big broad nose, and we'll be getting into this more a little bit. The big thing you want to have on the lion is this, the corner of the mouth here makes a big dark spot, and then our little mouth goes down to that. So that big sort of jowly spot, that makes for a very lion-y feature or lioness feature here. The neck is extremely muscular as well. So from the back of the skull to the top of the shoulder blade here, we're going to come straight back, and then we are going to down here into the chest here, a nice big thick neck. And there is a muscle that runs from the back of the skull here up over the top of the shoulder like this. And the brachiocephalus muscle. And so that often makes kind of a big groove right here. You can see that on this linus. The front limbs are super muscular. So we talked about this before, going from this little point here on the top of its elbow. Oh, let me pause for a second. I'm going to turn off the autofocus. So going back from back here to this point on top of here, there's a big muscle right here behind the arm that makes the, that's the triceps muscle. And it makes for this big bump on the back of the arm here. Sometimes you can even see a little groove. There are different heads of that muscle kind of coming in here. The biceps are smaller, and those things together make this front part of the body really bulky. And a little bit of chest sticks out here. And lastly, from the spine of this shoulder blade in here, from that spine, there are a couple of downward facing muscles that come down like this. You're not really seeing those on a, you don't see those on deer very prominently. Those are deltoid muscles, and because these things are wrestling with wildebeest, they have massive shoulders and massive deltoids. Similarly, here's another muscle you don't really run into on deer very much. From going from the side of the humerus, right here, so the humerus is this bone that is trending right in here. From there, wrapping up along the side of the body here are the lats, the latissimus muscles. And that's what makes this little kind of groove on the side of the body. So we're going to have a body that hangs down, depending on how much it's eaten or how hungry it is, will depend on the degree to which it tucks up in here. The forearms, even though they're thicker than this, are still pretty substantial, but we want to kind of taper them down in a cone that comes down. So this part is wider, getting narrower down here. And then the hand has two parts. There's a sort of a stick down part that is equivalent to these bones across here, and then we're up on our toes. And very often on these toes, you're not going to see the claw sticking out. You'll sometimes see a little kind of slit in the front of it. But just this whole thing is just bulky. It's massive. It's muscular, really bulky. So here's our running department. We're going to have a muscle that goes from the attaches along here on the humerus and a little bit in the pelvis. We have these big the triceps of the leg that in human beings are quadricep muscles, but it's actually a three-headed muscle on these guys. So the triceps of the leg there, another little muscle going from the point of the hip there. And that gives you this sort of little indentation and then a bump pattern. This bump would be bigger on a buff lion, but this one sits in a zoo. From the back of the hip here, there are muscles that come down to a little tendon that goes across the area where the knee is, like that. So again, we have this big box up here. As you come down in the leg, from the back of this big bone here, that's your humerus, not your humerus, your femur. From the back of the femur, a muscle that's big on the top gets skinnier. Again, the rule of thumb, or the rule of big toe, is that your muscles are always going to be bigger closer to the body. The further you get out, the more things are taken care of by tendons. So here's your big gastrocnemius muscle. And that leaves a gap right back here, kind of a little depression that you'll see on animal after animal. The top part, there's a big vein across it. You can expect to see that. So we're thick, thinner, And then there's that big toe there. We have a little tube of the tail that hangs down. I want to think of that tail as a tube. Now, this gives us, so let's stay centered, little line. Nope, that way. There we go. So this makes this lion really kind of buff. It's a buff critter. But its body is half of this. So if we're looking at this little frame here, this is going to be half. It's going to be a half body and half the legs, right, from the elbow and the knee down. Bulky. Think of this thing as just as massive. Now, compare this with a cheetah. Really, like, we look at this. What's the first thing that jumps to your mind? Right? Doesn't it? It just looks wrong. We've got, look at our lion proportions over here. And then look at the cheetah. It's got this tiny little pinhead, this super long, skinny body, and then these legs, these super long legs. So it just looks like somebody got in there with Photoshop and messed it up. But these are if you're expecting to see these proportions, though, which again, I don't expect to see these proportions because I'm so used to seeing like house cats. This has nothing like the proportions of a house cat. It's so easy to put slap your house cat proportions onto a, like, let's just like go back, like there's a lion, there's a, look at that. I mean, really? Huh. That's crazy. So here's one with a little radio collar on it. And we can see like how much of this is leg. So if the foot is way down here, there's almost two body lengths, two bodies fitting in between this body. If you put that below here, maybe it's 1.5 to 2 body lengths down here. That's a whole lot of leg going on. Wow. Wow. It's just spectacular. So this little beastie made for speed. So we've got a little, when I was drawing, I found it really hard to get this little diagram of the skeleton. And the reason was I wanted the skull to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Because I could not accept these sorts of proportions. But let's play with this. So if we've got a little small cat face here with its little catty ear, have a cuter little nose. So I have my little cat face. Let's go back to that previous one. The head feels out of, whoops, not you, out of proportion with the body and the neck. So we feel like we're just a little bit more into giraffe mode here. So it feels a little bit long to us. Whoop, not you. And then my body here, here's my rib cage. Inside the rib cage is the heart, the lungs. Down here is your more digestive tracts and some other organs and things. So this thing's body is going to be in something like this. Give it a little bit more in the upper chest. On the front legs, It also has a triceps, but these triceps is kind of hanging down here. Long bone here, to long here, to our foot on the ground. Let's just bop back to that other one for a second. Right. So here's the shoulder, here is its elbow, and then its wrist is way down here. And then what about on the back leg? So starting wider, getting narrower. On the lower leg, we're starting wider from about in here, as the gastrocnemius muscle comes in here, and it ends up on this little point here. So starting wider, getting narrower. And then you're going to have a tail that also feels really long. They'll use this tail as a counterweight to, if they're making a sharp turn, to help them kind of like a rudder to turn their tail. It helps them kind of keep their balance running at high speed. So, wow. Totally different form of a beastie. But now let's take a look at one more. Oh, and actually, just a sort of note on cheetahs. Some have sort of longer hair, not a full mane in the Serengeti, but sort of longer hair in here. We often have longer hair on the chest. And you can also sometimes expect kind of a little bit of longer hair right in this area here, kind of in that groin area. Good things to look for. The final one we want to compare it to, now that we've got a sense of lion and cheetah, take a look at leopard. Okay, so how much space between leopard body and the ground? Huh. It's a little bit more than one body length down here. But notice that this thing is not as bulky, it's not as massive as the lion. It's not as skinny and lightweight as the cheetah. So this is sort of this sort of halfway between. The weight of a lion is probably a little bit more than 3 times as much as a grown adult human. The weight of a leopard is about equal to the weight of an adult human. And the weight of a cheetah is about half the weight of an adult human. So you've got these 3 cats, each sort of stepping up. Let's sort of think about how we might kind of go about sketching in something like this. And then we'll get into spots. We'll look at spots in a moment. But I like to first put in, if something's wandering around, I draw, drag that down, I draw the back of that critter, sort of the line of the air along its back. And if the thing then disappears into the bushes, I recorded something. So on live critters moving around, right, this is a useful first line. And then I'm going to put in a little ball for a head. And I'm thinking on that, I'm not going to make it full on lion. I'm not going to make it super dinky like a cheetah. So this is going to be about a half and half. Bring your face down blocky. And on this beastie, I'm not going to I don't give it a big prominent chin like a lion. If I do this, it starts to feel like a lion. From where the ear attaches, see this on all the critters, from there, the edge of the head comes down from where it comes in from the ear. So that gives you this sort of head box. We'll look at the patterns on these in a moment. So from here, I've got a neck that comes down, and on this guy, as I'm looking at this, I think I want a bigger neck. So I'm going to pop up, especially on the back here, a little bit of a bigger neck. Not as thick as a lion, and not as skinny as a cheetah. Now, let's put in the body of this thing. I'm thinking the body of this thing is roughly this big, which means my ground is a little bit further down than that. In this front area, I'm going to think of this shoulder area as being where there's a big mass of muscle, and then my leg is going to be coming down from that. In the back, there's a big mass of muscle. And that is then getting smaller. That section, second section. And then there is the foot on the ground. And the big difference between deer, or a big difference between ungulates, deer, and things like that, and say a leopard or something, or a critter like that, is that on this joint here, and this joint here, the heel and the wrist, on these, the front one is lower, the back one is higher. If this were a deer or a zebra, this joint would be halfway down this space. And if this, similarly in the front, it would be half and half. This joint would be right up there in the half point. But you don't get that with these big cats. All right, so let's make this upper body a little bit buff. I'm remembering that I have in this area here, there's a shoulder blade that goes to a shoulder here to an elbow here. There's a big triceps muscle behind that. So I'm expecting to see this big kind of bulge of the triceps here. The biceps are kind of sticking out in the front. And then we're going to have this forearm zone coming down as a cone. Sometimes you see a little kind of hint of there's a muscle, sort of a strap-like muscle that goes across the side here. So you're going to see a little bit of a little indentation like that. On some, you'll see that little lat mark. And here along the belly, this is fluffier. So I'm going to make a few little tip marks kind of coming in, just sort of suggesting that there's just a little bit of fluff in this. The triceps is in here. Again, the hips are here. The hip bone is starting here and then going down to the knee. And that gives you that tricep muscle of the leg. And again, that's homologous to the quadriceps muscle in a human being. So that gives you this little kind of bulge out here in the leg. There's that little depression behind the ankle, right in there. And as I'm kind of drawing around on these, I often like to, as they kind of come over this little, any place where there's a little change in direction, sometimes I just kind of give that just a little hint of, in those places, just and sometimes in those places, that's where you'll see just a little bit of hint of a few hairs in there that just sort of help people sort of see that this is fuzzy. So this is kind of a half and halfer between the cheetah and the lion. Now, what if I wanted to put spots on these critters? The patterns that you see on these are really interesting. And so let's first just take a look at these three. And here we go. Whoop, no, not you yet. So lion. Oh. So the lion, on the tip of the tail, there's black. Behind its ears, there's black. If the ears are pressed back, you don't see that. And then there's that little spot on the side of its mouth. The leopard, we're going to have lots of spots, and we're going to take a closer look at that. Okay, so here's lion. We're not seeing the one behind the ear. We're not seeing the tip of the tail. But the lion, that little kind of dark spot by the mouth, that's really prominent. But let's also look where it is lighter. The front of the muzzle here, underneath the eye, underneath the eye. Ah, okay. And then a little bit more on the belly. So if I'm going back to somebody like this pale zone underneath the eye is really interesting.
Could you please lower your drawing just a bit, please?
Thank you. All right, I am going to give this one a little pale zone under its eye. And I'm going to, around the muzzle here, give it sort of a zone for white. And I'm just going to put a little bit of shading in these other areas. A little bit lighter towards the bottom of the head. That really helps that eye stand out, so that there's this contrast by the eye. That little white bar underneath it. That's kind of a neat little liony moment. This might also be kind of a fun place just to mention something about whisker pads. This big cheeky area is where the whiskers come in, and whiskers don't come in just randomly into that. They are organized in lines that wrap around the edge of that little whisker pad. So that you can see that making lines. On this, I'm seeing that corner of the mouth. Also going to give this one a little black tail tip. But what about cheetahs? Okay, spots. Let's look at the shape of the spots. They're ovals, right? So the ovals are tending to go down in this direction this way. They're tending to go over in this direction. So that means this oval here is going to be oriented up and down, ovals going this way over here, and then ovals kind of going down the leg. In the lower legs, there are fewer of them. You've got some nice big ones on the tail, and very often these have, towards the tip of their tail, kind of some dark zones, and then some bigger spots out here. So like a lion, there's a sort of dark area at the place, and here, sometimes there's also kind of a little kind of white accent on that. as you're putting spots on these, I'm going to do kind of two zones of thinking about spots on my little friend here. And I'm going to do it wrong here, and I'm going to do it right over here. So what you don't want to do is all these even spots. I don't want to get into a really kind of consistent pattern where they're all evenly spaced, or worse, kind of making a grid pattern. And also, another problem with these is, let's look at these ones at the top. They're coming in full oval all the way up to the top. But here's the back of the cheetah. And there are spots on that, but you're seeing those spots at an angle. That means that spots that are up here, you're going to see those as more kind of lines. And as you wrap around the body, I put those two a little bit closer to each other, because I want these to be kind of consistently inconsistent. And so they're wrapping around the top. Then as I get down on the body, and if I am looking at those on the side here, I'm also kind of on some of the edge of of this beastie, I'm going to get into spots that are also lines. So I don't want them to feel like they're on a flat surface. I want some of these ones here to be seen as an ellipse instead of its full side view oval. Densely spotted, and we'll get into the head in a moment. No two cheetahs have exactly the same spot pattern on them. And so something that you can do is you're looking at it, is say out loud, what am I seeing here? And just say like, oh wow, lower legs, bigger spots, more widely spaced. On the front of the legs, right, I have spots that come together to make some bars. So I actually have some barring on those across the front. A little bit of white at the tip of the tail. And then there's this crazy thing. Oh, yes. Okay. So for our leopard, where do you see these are called rosettes. Where do you see rosettes and where do you see solid spots? Where do you see big spots and where do you see small spots? Right. So solid, bigger spots on the legs. Solid spots on the head and neck. But when we get into the body and the haunches of this thing, we have these rosettes on the top surface. So if I were to go about painting this, here's what I would suggest you do. Is first, actually let's go for this one's friend, all right? Where is the fur white and where is the background color white and where is it golden? Okay, so I noticed that.
Oh, Jack, if you could move down. There we go, perfect.
Thank you, thank you. All right. So I'm seeing sort of general golden in here. and general kind of golden across the back of the neck. And there's golden kind of coming out in here. And as I go further on the side of the body, this is just on typing paper, so it's kind of absorbing in here. So I'd first think about sort of where are sort of these big areas of where do I see these sort of areas of color change in that underfur, and I get that underfur, and now it looks like a lion with bad proportions. And then I'm going to put my rosettes on this. So for my rosettes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up just a little bit of stronger paint. You know, these sort of gold spots. And so I first do the underfur. Then I do, actually I'm going to dry this thing off. All right, there we go, dry it off. And now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to start going, all right, now I need to place these little rosettes of spots. There's one, and then there's the other. Because it takes too much of my brain effort to get these random patches of spots around them and get these spots spaced out from each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, here I've got some that are kind of, you know, pointing over the back, right? And so these ones, like those spots on the cheetah, I'm seeing those as these little kind of flat things in here. And then as I am kind of coming down around the side of the body, I am now making these into these blotches. And if you, by the way, if you're feeling kind of stressed, oh no, I don't want to put spots all over this thing, just draw a little box around part of your critter and do the spot patterns that you see in that area. And then it's a little bit less intimidating. So there are smaller spots that are kind of coming up in here. And those continue sort of mid-sized spots over the shoulder. In. And I can continue this over the whole body. Some down the tail. It's for saving a little bit of time right now. I'm not going to kind of continue in the haunches here, but you get the general idea, right? And then what I can do is I'm going to get some dark paint. And now I'm going to put these dark spots around the edges of these. Sometimes it's in a little bar, sometimes, like here's a little bar, sometimes it's a spot, spot, spot. So my order of operations is to start with the under fur color, then I am putting the tawny spots on there, and then I'm putting these dark accents, the little rosettes around those. And if I were continuing this down into the neck and the shoulders, there's smaller spots, smaller little rosettes here. And as I get further down on the leg, these are going to start to turn into black spots. And black spots coming up here. On those spots, take a look at the negative shapes and distances between those spots. They're pretty packed together. It's not a white leg with a few spots on it. That's a really spotty leg. And saying those sort of things outside to people in your vehicle, out loud to people in your vehicle, will help you notice those things and help you get those things down on your piece of paper. The final thing is the heads of these beasties. For the heads, that pale crescent under the eye of the lion and that little jowly mark, those are mission critical for making it look like a lion. The cheetah, however, has a really different pattern. There are these, what they call these tear marks, these tear streaks that come down from the eye and then wrap around the back part of the muzzle pad. That connects in a really distinct line up to the eye. And then on the back side of that, there are dots, not too prominent in this cheetah, but very often it kind of looks like a line of other kind of tear marks coming down in spots behind that eye. So let's just draw a cheetah head here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a ball. This will be a 3/4 view. And then here's that line of its nose coming out, so the midline of its nose. And I'm going to turn that midline of its nose into a little platform. The lion has a huge wraparound nose. The cheetah has a cute little doggy nose. Here's the front part of this little muzzle. And give myself a little lip up. So on this mark here, there's a tendency to do the little snout of this like this. Here's the lip on one side, here's the lip on the other side. Same. But notice, because this is turned at an angle, I have a short side, I have a long side. So for a 3/4 view, catty faces, that's going to be important. Here's my whisker pad. Here, I have my little chinny chin sticking down below that. And there is this line that comes down from the eye and swoops around here. I don't want to put my eye up too high, or it's going to feel like there's a long nose like a dog. Cats have shorter faces than dogs. So I'm going to keep my eyes lower. I have one eye here, and at the same height, I'm going to have my other eye kind of hiding in back over here. There's going to be skin and muscle kind of bulging out around the eye on both sides, on the top and the bottom. On any 3/4 view, this far side eye is the hardest part. It's not going to be the same shape as the eye that is on the side closest to you. And so it really, if you're doing from photographs, always take a double look there. It helps to draw a number of these from photographs so you can kind of get used to this sort of cut off eye shape that's right over here. Here is my cheek. This is a small nose pad on the cheetah. And this big swoosh stripe. Very often with cats, you'll see the pupil not there in the middle of the eye like that, but because the head is hanging down a little bit, the eye is set back further, the pupil is up there with the touching the top edge of it. For the put my cheetah top of my head up here. There's going to be an ear that's going to stick out somewhere over there. I'm going to have an ear wrapping around the side of the head in here. Here are these kind of cool little curls. These little kind of, you'll often find a kind of a line, a really prominent line. You don't see it so much on this photograph. You often find sort of a line of little spots coming down from behind the edge of the eye of the cheetah. And then this zone here, this little patch of spots on the side of the head. I'm going to do one ear on this side, just because I think I did some stuff on cat ears the other day, but it bears repeating. On the one that is facing towards you, there's often this, there on the front edge of the ear, there are some big hairs. And then behind that is sort of the cavity of the ear. And then there's lighter colored hair around the outside edge. Lastly, let's think about this guy's whisker pads. I want people to think of this area here as kind of wrapping around a rounded form. And so giving just sort of a little hint of, you know, what the whiskers are kind of bending around like that helps people kind of like, oh, you're turning a corner there. You're coming this way and going this way. That finally on the leopard, there's a whole bunch of spots, right? Not on top of the nose. These whisker pads are really showing the marking. It has that little lower dark cheek patch like or sort of gum patch like the lion did, but there's not that thing going up to the eye and not a clear kind of progression of dots coming out from behind the eye. Something you are seeing here is this little crescent above the eye, and I think that is a really useful thing to look for on cats. I'm going to go back through those other cats and you'll see that there's a little hint of this mark that you're seeing black right here on the other cats as well. Oh, look at the pupil right against the top there. Oh, see, that makes it look kind of glary, right? So this little zone here on cats is often pigmented. There's often even whisker-like fibrissae sticking out of those. So let's just go back and we'll look at this one. Now we look at this and we say like, okay, you've got it too. There's this thing. And on the lion here, see that little brown mark right there in the same place. So those marks are also very kind of catty marks. And but you're just, as you're putting those in, look at this. If my eyes are in this plane, my nose is in that same plane, the corners of my mouth are in the same plane, I want these to be in the same plane. Do you see what I did there? These little marks here should be parallel with all these other lines, but they're not. And that's why it's cattywampus. So if you don't want your cat to be cattywampus, then use some parallel guides on the 3/4 view. And now I can move this up there, so that these features that should be parallel with each other end up being parallel with each other. And that is the kitty cat comparison. I hope that there were some useful ideas and strategies in there. Oh, it looks like there's been a really interesting conversation going on in the chat, which I was not able to follow while I was doing my demo, but I will take a look at that later. If there's anybody who wants to kind of share some of your thoughts, comments, and ideas that you had during this demo, any thoughts about comparing cats, or sometimes if there is a particular kind of take home from this workshop that you're like, oh, that's that little point there, I want to keep that. by articulating that and saying it out loud, you make your brain remember that a little bit better. So if there's something for you that is a take-home that you wanted to share, then let's do that. Let's start with Holly. So Holly, you can unmute. If you want to, you can turn on your screen. If you don't want to turn on your screen, you do not have to. But you are able to unmute at this time. And what is your comment, your thought, or your idea? That might be just an accidental hand raise. Holly, if you're trying to unmute, on the bottom, usually left-hand corner of the screen, there is a little picture of a microphone. Ah, there we go.
Hi, sorry.
No
I am technically challenged.
It is quite all right.
Yeah, okay. So I tried to do some drawings, and the head I found incredibly difficult because of the size of it. And it kept turning into, first it looked like a dog, and then I got it to look, well, it only looks like a teddy bear in this picture. I'll have to show it to you. I will work on it now with your tutelage, and you can see. But I really thought this was amazing how high those bones up in there are when they run. You know that angle there?
Yeah.
But look how funny the head looks.
But you have a small head, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I did do a front on of a cheetah. This was a cheetah that was literally walked up to a camera and went like this. So this is 10.
Oh, see, yes, those little eyebrow marks.
Yeah,
Those little above the eye marks. This is great.
Yeah, and I was remembering how that one of the it was the African American gentleman who did one of the Wild Wonder conferences. He did all of his sheets. He put this color down first, and I thought, oh, I want to do that, and then I realized, oh, but cheetahs have a lot of white on them, and I'm like, why did I do that? So I took my pan pastels and I dabbed a little white into the area for the
yeah, Timothy Joe was pre-tinting some of those pages, and then you can also use, once it's dry, you can use white Prismacolor pencil or gouache also on top of that to put those whites in.
Okay, yeah. So that's all I got, but it was really fun. Oh, one other thing is I ordered this thing, and it's actually a proportion divider, which I really don't. I won't do that yet, but the idea is if you catch a certain spot that will injure your side by double or triple. But what I do is I just hold, once I drew that cheetah, then I took it like this and I just checked to see, because if this holds it in place nicely, so it doesn't slip. Because I have a really hard time with rulers, anything with numbers, I can't see it. And so this is just like hugely helpful to me. If anybody has trouble with rulers, and that, it could be helpful for somebody else. So yeah.
Well, that's a great tool. Yeah, those proportional dividers, allow you to, so if you're just doing something that's life size, you can measure the thing and then bring the measurement over to your piece of paper, measure the thing, bring it over to your piece of paper. But depending on where you put the screw in it, you can move that around so that you of course, if it's the same, if the sticks are the same size on the top and the bottom, then the one on the top makes something that's the same size as the ones on the bottom. But if the top has shorter sticks, then you can make something that's half as big. So by changing the positions of that, sometimes people will use those to kind of measure, like I'm doing a reduction of 3/4, and so they're using these proportional dividers. My brain usually fries when I try to do that. And so for me, my approach is that I will, if I can do something like a flower or a shell, I'll do it life size. And then I don't have to do this translation of like, I'm now drawing this half as big as it is. And that helps me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's cool.
Thank you.
Really
Thank
nice
you.
proportions on that cheetah head.
Oh, I worked really hard.
Great. Holly, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Welcome.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Now, if anybody else has a something that you have either a big cat thought or other journaling things that you wanted to share, comments, thoughts, or ideas, please put up your paw and we will bounce over to you. You can either use the raise hand function, or if you don't know where that is, you can just kind of wave at me and I'm looking at your video. Let's bring in Marley and then Ray Bonto. Marley, great to see you.
Yeah, I just want to share one quick conceptual thing that I think is super useful, but I think that it's important to remember that surface patterns and the illusion of volume are often diametrically opposed. So when you're trying to make a drawing that looks three-dimensional, you can feel that is a 3D leopard. That's one goal. And trying to get the spots, the surface texture, sometimes with many animals, it's actually intentionally so. Those things are going against each other. So sometimes it's useful, like Jack showed, how to separate those things out. And in one place, do surface texture detail, but not do your whole animal. Because what you'll start noticing is that some of the strategies for showing a three-dimensional animal in a sketch that looks good in three-dimensional, when you start putting the spots, it's the same with trees, rocks, and everything. So just remembering that, and maybe separating those two strategies out, because a lot of times you can ruin a drawing, or you might feel disappointed after you add the surface texture and suddenly it looks totally flat, and then it just, yeah. So that was the only thing I want to point out.
That's a really, really good point, Marley. So yeah, also if we're kind of looking at counter shading on something, that's a good example of where these two ideas are diametrically opposed to each other. So if you are a animal running around, whether are you a predator or a prey, it's good to camouflage your shape, and you don't want everybody else to see you as this big three-dimensional object. So that's why a lot of critters will have light color on their tummy and darker color on their back, because then the shadow of their body is where the lighter color is. The darker color is where the sun is hitting it, and those two kind of cancel each other out, so it's harder to see the three-dimensional nature of that body. But then I try to draw the three-dimensional nature of the body, I'm kind of canceling out my counter shading. That's perhaps another example of the phenomenon that you're describing really well. Marley, it's really great to see you again. It's fun. Let's join Ray Bonto. And first, Ray Bonto, can I show something that arrived in the mail? So, folks, I got this package in the mail the other day, and I opened it, I carefully opened it up, and what I found was this. Check this out. Look at that. Isn't that fun? So this is these studies of that little heron that you were seeing in India when you were there. This is I love the dimension on this. You can sort of feel the bulkiness and the roundness of this, and then the angularity of the body back here. Little hint of habitat. This thing's just skulking around in the weeds, and then here are just some quick gesture sketches of the same beastie. Ray Bonto, this was a wonderful Christmas present, and thank you so much for this bird. How are you doing?
You're welcome. Thanks. Yeah, I'm doing well now. But yeah.
Ah. Hold on, I'm going to remove my spotlight and make this bigger. Yes, yep. Look at those lion proportions. Doesn't that feel solid? Yeah. That's really fun. That's really fun. Yeah, I'm getting the proportions of these critters. Long legs on the cheetah, and just that muscle on the. I like the just sort of kind of a technical drawing point. I look at the line variation on this lion drawing, the lion lines, and where some places we're going thicker, some places we're going thinner. That just graphically makes this such a strong image. That's a strategy that a lot of illustrators use, is intentionally getting yourself this line variation that carves these shapes. That's really effective there.
Thanks.
Oh. Oh, this is fun. This is fun. Yeah, the light colored tail and belly against that background also really show up well.
And there's the head.
Nice. Got that sort of cheetah glare. It looks it just it yeah this again the line variation. Line variation is people are wondering like wow, this is a really strong graphic drawing. Notice how just like look at that swoop above the ear on the left side. That line hits heavy and then it is dropping around into the back. It goes light and then hits with a medium pressure in on the side of the head. So if you're intentionally using these lines that are these lines that vary in weight like this, it makes our diagrams and drawings much more dynamic. That's really useful.
Thanks.
Hey, great to see you, and thank you again for this. Tell me what type of heron it is. It was
Wonder.
the pond heron. The pond heron. That's really cool. Thank you so much. That's really fun to see.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Absolutely. Let's join Kate, then Shannon, then Susan. I am going to. All right, so Kate, you can unmute and hi there.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well today.
That's good. I figured I'd show you some of the sketchbook pages. I started my February sketchbook, and much to your horror, I got a spiral bound just to test that out.
You might find you
Also,
like it.
yeah, well, it was what the art store had because I wanted to get something that had a little bit more durable paper to encourage more watercolor. So I started off, I did just a color swatch of all my paints just to kind of take stock of all the colors I had and how they reacted to this paper. And one thing I noticed is it didn't sink in super well. This is just I think it's a Strathmore pad.
Okay.
I had an assignment for one of the Yale classes, to do something where you blended together multiple animals. So on my Instagram, I posed a question, people saying what animals I should blend together, which led to some pretty interesting and horrifying results, but it was kind of a fun exercise.
Is that a lagwin?
It is.
A lagwin. I've never seen a lagwin before.
Yeah, the names that people came up with were pretty creative too.
That's fun.
I started off trying to make something that seemed, realistic-ish, and then it just evolved into chaos. But there's a couple of those. I think my favorite was possum crossed with a what are they called? The ducks. A Muscovy duck and a possum. Someone requested that.
Oh, a Muscovy duck and a possum. That's next level. That's really fun.
That was pretty fun. I've been trying to master the two-toed ampluma. What was really funny is I had a big misconception when I was drawing it about what the two-toed ampluma was really like. I thought it was sort of a cute little wormy eel type salamander thing. Apparently, they get to be 4 feet long, have a terrible bite that requires stitches when they bite people, and they eat carrion and crawfish. So who knew that we had these massive salamander eel things lurking around in the swamps of South Carolina?
Wow.
Right? So that
Yeah.
changed how I started drawing them. So I started doing like study pages, and what I started doing was I found some videos on YouTube. People had them as pets and were feeding them, and so that kind of really made me kind of understand how they work a bit more. And I tracked some crayfish, so I want to be able to include that in their like illustration that I do for the salamander book. So I've just been practicing that like crazy, trying to figure out how to draw those, include contrast, and make them look, wet and slimy and underwater.
Oh, and is that a skull study too?
Yeah, so when I was kind of struggling with the head, Parker, the guy I'm working with, he sent me some diagrams of amphibia skulls, which really kind of helped me figure out what was going on in there. So I copied some of those down. There's some like with the mouth open and from the YouTube videos I was watching.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Who knew? Yeah, I always thought those guys would be, you just kind of look at them, they look like they kind of be cuddly, but guess not.
Would think. Apparently, they are very bad-tempered animals. You have to be very careful if you manage to handle one. And then today, I want to just kind of get a little warm up in before we started, and so I did some seabirds. Yeah, just trying to find a good rhythm to keep my pencil miles up, so I'm regularly improving instead of trying to like recalibrate every time I have time off to work or to work on my art stuff. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. Those are some really solid pencil miles. And I also like how you're kind of giving yourself these sort of fun anatomy projects as you to splice things together.
Yeah, well, so the main thing I'm trying to work on now is getting good at sketching, because I feel like I am terrible at doing like the light lines and slowly building it up. So I'm trying to teach myself patience in drawing, which has been difficult. So I like to kind of rush things. And I mean, remember when I do like 50 sketches of the same type of bird and really learn how to do it. But I want to be able to do kind of these slow sketches where I really kind of pick things apart and adjust it. And that does not come easily to me. So that's a work in progress. That I'm trying to learn values a bit more. I think in another video you did, you said people are more concerned about values than correct coloration when they're initially looking at a piece. So
Yep.
Yeah, those are kind of my two big goals right now.
That's great. I think value is huge. Like we can look at a black and white photograph and it makes total sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And because there's all those values there. And we're so used to seeing things like at every time of the day, as the light changes, the colors on things change. Like morning light, everything's orangey, and then midday more kind of cool bluey, and then evening it gets all warm again. And so we can change those colors and it still looks like that critter. But
Yeah.
those values go astray and it's just not going to work out for you.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Thanks for sharing those. Let's join Shannon. Hey there, Shannon. Good to see you. You can now unmute.
There.
Oops, I think you unmuted yourself and then I remuted you. Hold on. One more time.
Did it work?
Yes, there we go.
Good. This was very helpful to me today. I draw in spurts over the years, so I don't have anything much that's like terribly recent. But the work that you did with us today was really helpful to kind of bring me back into the cat realm, which I'd played in a little bit in the past, not a lot. So I really enjoyed going through the different, comparative studies of the different cats. Not that they're very good, but I mean, my versions. But it was helpful for me to think about it again. And so I'll show one that I did do in the past. This was done with the help of a very fine artist. His name is Ron Lemon. Heather can probably put into the chat where he's currently working. But he, you know, helped Heather and I both at one weekend or something, work with our first, well, at least my first real experience with, I believe we were using gouache. So this was the subject matter that he had, and this is as far as I got with it. I never finished it, but as usual, I have about 4 other, you know, drawings ready to go for whenever the mood affects.
Yeah, hold that up one more time, if you would. I want folks to notice that the shadow below the eye. It really kind of, you get the feeling for that cheekbone kind of sticking out. That eye then feels set into the head. I really like the kind of eye set into this head here. That's really fun.
It was quite a fun experience to do. And as I said, I kind of work in spurts. So, you know, a lot of unfinished things laying around here and there. But here's another version that I did of a Black Panther, also after another apparently very fine artist's piece of work. So it's not my original, but at the time I was quite fascinated by, of all things, the background especially, but then also the exaggerated effect of the Black Panther. So I played around with that, did a number of drawings after this, and I don't remember who the artist was. So, you know, that's how that goes.
That's fun. You really get a sense of that muscularity on that glossy fur.
Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's the kind of, you know, lion work and feline wild cat work that I've messed around with over the years. And it's been really nice to kind of revisit it today with you. And also, Kate, I want to just mention that I think your you know, your book that you're working on is really wonderful, quite fine. So good luck with that. Continue on. That's what it takes, is ongoing practice. Not like me, where it's once every 10 years.
But you know, we don't want to beat ourselves up. As we kind of do things, I think that the danger is that when we kind of compare ourselves to somebody else, I find myself doing that. Like, I'm not doing as much as that person is doing, and then I feel like, oh, I'm bad. No, you just want to keep going, and you know, do whatever your schedule and time allows. And the amount that you did is better than not having done that, and kind of like, hey, that's great. So welcome back really to Big Cat Land.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, I've had a very different non-artist in the strict sense history. So I've just, you know, done what I can when I can, and I enjoy it. So, and I really enjoy being able to participate in this every so often too. Thanks, Jack.
Absolutely. Yeah, Avea is suggesting to ourselves in the chat that let's just go easy on ourselves. And Susan's also kind of pitching in that, like, you know, let's make it something that's enjoyable. It's easy to, if you start kind of thinking I should be doing this or I should be doing that, then lots of things turn on us. And I shudder to think of what would become of our brains then. Thank you so much, Shannon. So speaking of Susan, let's join Susan. Hey there, come on
Hello.
down.
Hey.
How are you doing?
Great, how are you?
Did you get to see the comment?
You know what, I forgot until about 11 p.m. last night, and somebody, my roommate said, oh, did you see it? And we went out to look, and it was cloudy. And the clouds were thin enough that we could see the moon through them, but I couldn't see anything else. But clear skies today. I don't know how quickly the comet is sort of moving on its way, but I'll go out tonight and we'll see if we can see it, and fingers crossed.
Yeah, so, I'm looking out at lots of clouds in the Bay Area here.
Yeah. Well, good news and bad news is we're about to get a cold snap. So, you know, which is kind of good because we haven't had a very cold winter so far, and kind of like it makes me worried when it's not that
But
cold.
that's not the experience that everybody's had this time.
Yeah, I know, but this in this area at least, yeah. So we've been lucky so far. But like, I will take the cold and not being buried in snow. That will be a nice thing. But with that, possibly will come clear skies. So we'll see. Yeah, so fingers crossed. I'm looking out my window now, which is like perfectly clear skies right now, but of course it's during the day, so that doesn't help.
We'll find out.
But yeah, so yeah, this is great, and I'm just thinking about one thing I noticed when you were showing some pictures of the cheetah, that I'm like, I'm just sort of thinking about imagining if I were in Africa and I were watching this is what I would be putting in my nature journal, is the way that there was a photo of that cheetah like running, and the tail was, bloop, bloop, and I thought, that's what my cat does when he runs.
Oh,
like
fun.
his tail isn't sticking out straight. It's not down flat. It's not sticking up. When he's really, really running, it's sort of sticking just slightly up, and then it curves, and it's just exactly the same shape. And now I'm just thinking, like, why? Like, what is there a reason for the tail being in that exact position? Does it contribute to the balance? Does it make it easy? I don't know. Just, yeah. So just.
And what you're saying reminds me of, I'm going to run over to my bookshelf for a moment and pull a book off it that kind of ties into this, if I can find it.
A book all about cattails and how they move, huh? You were asking, do I observe different cats holding their tails differently? I definitely do. And for one thing, my cat, he's got a very jaunty tail. Almost always is sticking straight up. And if here's his body and here's his tail, and then it just sort of curves over at the end, makes a little question mark. The tip of the tail never holds it straight. And then I see you know what? I see outdoor cats tending to hold their tails sort of horizontal a lot more often, and I don't know if that's
that's
relation with outdoor cats, or if that's just a thing about personalities of those particular cats, or what. But I don't know. It's very interesting. I want to get to Africa and look at more big cats now, but someday.
Yeah, that you know, when we get a project in our heads, you know, such as, I'm going to do a deep dive on the poses of animals' tails. So the book that
rabbit
I'm
hole
wanting
again
to bring over, I'm not finding.
So I'm not going to show you something that relates to that. But when we get kind of a puzzle in our head, like, what's going on with animal tails? It's just like, you know, Akshay's boxy critter idea, where you're gonna narrow in on something, and there's other things that you won't notice, but you will notice a ton more about these little tail shapes and angles. And I think that paying attention to the things that kind of make us go, we have this feeling like you should get everything, but like, what if I get tail poses? I'm going to learn something. And if I stress myself out by trying to get everything, I might be so general that nothing really specific is coming through.
That's a difficulty I have. I'll stress myself out trying to get, you know, I'll be drawing something and I'll be trying to get every single detail. And because of that, I'm not getting any of the details well, and I'm focusing on all things that I'm not getting. And, you know, sometimes I really have to just like force myself to just like be interested deeply in one thing, and then accept that I'm going to miss other things, and that's okay because I haven't gotten interested in this one thing. Yeah, but but so if I can segue and share, speaking of trying to get everything and not managing to, but I just wanted to share some adventures that I've had recently. If that's right. And I can't remember what I may have shared or not in what sessions. I don't think that I shared this here. So, but if I have, if you've seen it before and you say move on, that's fine.
Actually, before you bring that in, what you just said, I've got a goofy analogy. When we try to get everything, we don't allow ourselves to kind of develop any depth with any individual thing. My analogy today is dating apps and websites, right? And some people oh, I want to date this and this and this and that and that, and then you're not kind of sinking into a relationship with one person, but you have this feeling that that there's that all this that the smorgasbord that is possible out there is that somehow you should be exposed to that, but there isn't enough time in the day or a lifetime, and the relationship that you get if you just like date curling tails and just accept that means like I'm not going to be going out on these dates with feet, and I'm okay with that. But there will be something beautiful and deeper that comes out of having kind of really established a more meaningful relationship with tail curves. And so true with life.
Well, also, I mean, I think to extend that, also when it comes to dating apps, also like what are you putting on your profile? And I will be honest with you, I've never used the mic can, so this is all speculation on my part. But you know, if you're trying to create your profile and put what your interests are and what your personality and all these things, because I have to like construct this image of myself that is going to appeal to the most people. You're going to have like the most generic profile. I think that there are a lot of people who are going to it's just going to disappear into the sea of generic profiles that they're looking at.
Yes.
But also B, the people who do get your interest, it's going to turn out when they find out the thing you're really interested in that you didn't put in there is you're interested in cattails.
Yes.
You know that you're going to not going to attract this. If you instead you put like, you know, like I don't really use these, but if I were looking to date, I would definitely put like, what's your ideal date? Going deep into the tick-infested woods and looking for bugs.
Yes.
Most people are going to be put off by that, but the one person who isn't is the one that I want to date, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so you're being honest with yourself, honest with them, and you're probably going to have more fun on that date because there's somebody who's, you know, also can handle the ticks. That's good. That's good. And so this is even more of a tangent, but a little bit less like, you know, how it kind of makes me think tangentially of when you get spam emails from people who are who have, like, you know, the Nigerian prince scam, you know, these sorts of online scammers, and they're always, you know, misspelled, and even for a dyslexic, they're misspelled and have bad grammar. And part of that's actually intentional, so that, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to weed out all the people who have, if that looks okay to somebody, that's the sort of person that you're going to be able to scam. So they don't get as many bites.
They don't waste their time on you.
That's right. They're not wasting their time with somebody who's got better critical thinking skills. Somebody's going like, really, me? You're from Nigeria? What's the weather like? You know, and so
I want to know, honestly. It sounds great. I'd love to talk to someone from Nigeria. I just don't want to give them my computer information while I do.
Yeah. All right. So now, what's happening in your journal?
Well, so speaking of ticks, I mentioned several months ago that I had signed up for this Lyme disease vaccine clinical trial, which I have been now participating in. I can tell you mostly wanting to kind of see what it's like from the inside. Mostly the experience has been spending a lot of time in the office, sort of doing paperwork, because there's lots of different like permissions, and it's been a lot more paperwork than anything else. And then also actually like getting some shot. I've had 2 doses now of this. Interestingly, I found out that they will never tell me, even at the end of the trial, whether I'm in the control group or the experimental group. unless if I were to have to go to the hospital or something like that, or having a medical emergency, they say you give this card to them, and then they can then the hospital can then contact the vaccine people, and then if it is relevant, they can find out, because it might be relevant whether I've actually had a vaccine or not. But anyway, so point is that part of the interesting thing about this is that it is a 2-hour drive out to the location that I have to do this to, and it's a drive through bits of rural New York and Vermont that are very beautiful, very lovely. Unfortunately, the weather has been mostly okay, and so they're kind of up over this mountain, like all these beautiful views of the snow-covered trees and everything. So I've sort of figured that I'll make a day of it every time I have to go, and I'll find some interesting like locations to go to and things. And then as it turns out, so even in the cold, when I don't really want to be wandering around outside, there's interesting locations. So first of all, so I was driving along, and I'm looking at the side of the car, and I'm driving along, and I realized, okay, I need to stop the car or I'm going to crash it, because look what I'm seeing outside the car. There's this like fog-covered lake with just fog coming up in front of the island. So I thought, oh, this is a fun exercise in how do I like try to put that down on paper and capture the effect of that fog. And I'm not sure that I succeeded as much as I wanted to, but I learned a lot while doing it. Came in with watercolor, and then later on I had some colored pencils that I kind of came in over, trying to sort of get the separation between the icy water and then the fog that seemed to be thicker where it was blocking the island and the back. So now I'm just thinking, okay, so why is the fog thicker in some places than others? And it was constantly changing for the whole half hour that I was trying to sketch this, while my car was parked at an access point for the reservoir that had explicit signs saying no trespassing. You may not park yourself. But I have an excuse. I'm trying to draw this. Nobody bothered me about it, but So anyway, yeah, so it's beautiful. And of course, I'll pass that same place in the future again. So maybe I'll look and see, maybe there'll be some cool birds or something the next time that I'm there in the spring. But yeah. So then I'm going along, and there's this museum that I had seen on the way the last time I'd gone there. Little teensy weensy little museum at the top of a mountain in Vermont called the Southern Vermont Natural History Museum.
Ooh, this sounds good.
Folks, if you ever have the opportunity to go to a little teensy weensy museum, you should go, because little tiny museums are the absolute best. And this one turned out to be a total gem. Have like so many birds, taxidermy birds of like every bird that there is in Vermont. Just all these displays of them, it was really cool. And I'm like wanting to sketch every single one. Unfortunately, I had a very limited time, so this was the question: like, do I do every single thing, or just a little bit? But I can go back there again, so I will. But in the meantime, then I go along a little further. And look at this cute little friend.
Oh, look at this dangly droopness.
So he's live.
Yeah, and this is its position when it's floating in the water.
Yep, it's floating in the water. He was just sleeping. You can see his eye is I think he was sleeping. His eye was closed. And after I stood there for a few minutes, he opened his eyes and just kind of like looked at me, and it's just like,
Oh.
So this is actually sketched later at the doctor's office for this appointment here, where I had lots of downtime. Sketched from a photo because I was trying to see the place very quickly here. But I'm actually really pleased with myself, because this is one of the first times that I've really tried to do the like light and dark on toned paper thing.
Yep. And you're leaving part of the paper color.
And I learned a lot about choosing where to put the lights and darks on the toned paper, and how what edges to kind of emphasize and whatnot. So that was a lot of fun. One thing I kind of am thinking of adding to this was I wanted to get some background in. But I'm looking at the photo that I took, and in the surface of the water is just right here, and there's a little bit of his reflection from underneath on the surface of the water. And so I might try and kind of come in there and try and get a little bit of that reflection up there. So we'll see. But yeah, so it was fun. So I'm hoping, so what I'd like to do really is like sketch from life the next time I go that direction, and actually like, get some more close-up sketches of him and stuff, because I was very limited time. But look at all these I love all these good textures, and he's got all this like big
little
parts of his body,
nugget things.
Warts, and he's got some areas are like hard and some areas aren't. And I'm not going to reach my hand in there and try and squish him, even though I kind of want to, but he would probably bite me because he's a turtle. But yes, I love snapping turtles. They're so cute, and I would never ever get near one because what I've learned is that however long you think their necks are longer than that, and they will.
Oh, that is a good
So
thing to
yeah,
remember.
so very dangerous. But yes, this was fun, and again, like I like there was so much to see. I hardly even got the book out. But then I'm going along further because they have all these different displays. They have like rescue raptors. You go farther in there, it's like a small kind of rescue.
Oh my
They
gosh,
have
what a
couple of
great
bald
place.
eagles. Some bald eagles that can't fly very far, so they have a sort of big space that's just big enough they can do some flying, but they can't be released. And they have some owls, and I think they had a red-shouldered hawk.
You got to go back.
Yeah,
You got to go back.
I had like 1 hour to like do like the run through and see everything, but I have to go back that direction several times a year, so lots of opportunities. So yes,
Wow.
I'm hoping to go back, multiple times and see what to see. And among the displays of birds, they had a passenger pigeon.
Oh, wow.
And I've never seen them. Obviously, it's a taxidermy. It is not,
Yeah.
live. Otherwise, that would be even more amazing. But yeah, I've never seen them before, and they're so beautiful. So this is like another thing I want to go sketch that. I got some photos of that, but I want to go sketch it from life. But yeah, so this is like this absolute gem, and they have like. And most of what they have there are things that have been donated by local residents over time. And I think that whoever was who collected all these birds in the past, I'm not sure.
Oh my gosh, that is really fun.
Yeah, so it's this neat little teensy museum just run by very passionate local people, all about the natural history of Vermont, and it's just really, really neat. So actually I'm seeing Kate's kestrel on there. They had among the birds they had was a kestrel that was very
live.
Cute. Yes, live.
Oh,
and again, they're rescues that can't be released, and so they take care of them.
It's fun to sit in a little museum next to a live bird when it's turning its head like this.
Oh yeah.
And you can get like 5 or 6 different little head poses.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool.
Very, very exciting. So this is the last thing to show then. So a couple days later, I actually, due to my not having looked at the map carefully enough, I hadn't realized that we were going to be going the same direction again. But my friend and I made a pilgrimage to a place we've been wanting to go for a very, very long time.
Mm.
The Caterpillar Lab.
The what?
The Caterpillar Lab.
Oh my word.
So
Tell
it is
us.
in New Hampshire. It is actually not very far from where I had to go for the Lyme disease thing. And it is these two gentlemen, these two entomologists, who are working on this project of documenting the life stages of every caterpillar, that is every butterfly and moth, in the Northeast, as well as in further south. And they go out and they collect every species of caterpillar that they can find. I think they have like a great deal of them. And a lot of these things, like there might be like one specimen of this thing in a museum somewhere, and that's how the species has been documented. And they're actually rearing them from eggs when they can. In fact, what they do sometimes is they'll do like bed sheeting, and they'll collect, and they'll get like gravid female moths, and then get the moths to lay their eggs, so that they can then rear them from eggs and know what the species is, because they have the mother moth there. And like photographing in incredible detail every life stage, like every instar caterpillar, all these things. And then they also do shows and demonstrations. They bring these to like, schools and things that you can see. And they just have open hours. You can just go there and see all the caterpillars on Saturdays. So we went, and they had so many things to see. It was like being a kid in a candy shop. I mean, there were just so many cool things. They had caterpillars that were in this process of molting that they had under a microscope that was being displayed on a big screen so you could see. And one of the things that they rear a bunch of hickory horned devils. Which are native silk moth. These are this is the adults. And they are technically native to this area in New England, but what they said is that they're no longer present in New England, and I think New York. They've been kind of wiped out, I think, by some parasites or something, but they are present further south, and so there is hope that they will move back north eventually.
Hickory horned devil.
Yes,
Oh, what
these are the
fun.
Look at these. So these are the pro legs, which on any other caterpillar or most caterpillars are these short, stubby little things. And these are so heavy, and so these are like one of the biggest caterpillars, and maybe the biggest caterpillar of America. They're so heavy. These legs, the real legs are here. These are the pro legs are so long, so they can just like cling to a branch because
So, how long is this life size?
This I tried to do it. This is I think a little bigger than life size of a caterpillar that was almost but not fully grown. This was a recently molted 5th instar caterpillar, and it will grow considerably before sun. So the gentleman said they're sort of the size of a hot dog by the time they're done. And then this moth is about life size. This is the moth that it will eventually turn into. And so they are rearing them in the location, and they just have them like loose in the place because the caterpillars aren't going to go anywhere. They're on some food plants, and they had a vase with the food plants, and they're just sitting there. So my friend and I just like sat at the table and we just sketched them. And then this is the one of the moths, and being as with most silk moths or all silk moths, I think they don't have any mouth parts as adults, and they'll live maybe a week. They basically just mate, lay eggs, and they're done. So this one had recently closed, and it was just chilling on a bunch of twigs in the corner. And I just went over there and sketched it. And like they're not worried it's going to fly away or anything. It's just hanging out there. So they had a whole bunch of other insects that they have just kind of for show, because they like do a lot of things for kids. So they had like giant walking sticks that again are just like they just had like a planter with some like raspberry branches in there and on the table, and I'm just sitting there, and it wasn't for many minutes before I realized that one of the raspberry branches was actually moving slightly. And it's a giant walking stick as long as my arm. So again, it's one of these things. I'm like, do I try and sketch everything quickly, or do I try and do something close up? And I thought, well, when am I ever going to have a chance to look this closely at hickory horned devil, because I hadn't realized that you can't actually find them wild out here. So I thought I'd do that, but I'll go back there again too, and then I can sketch more.
Absolutely.
Those are my
life is is short. We got to draw hickory horned devils. That's wonderful.
And also slowly, the gouache and I are beginning to make friends. So
on toned paper, it's your buddy.
Gouache
has got your back on that toned paper.
So it's like, you know what? If the gouache is going to give me some that nice bright orange and sort of nice, color there. The thing I've been having trouble with is like predicting how transparent or opaque it's going to be when I put it down. And so then
you put it down, and it first looks nice and opaque to you, and then it gets more transparent as it dries.
Yeah, and the color changes too. So it's just been, I think, the more practice I have, the more I will get that sense. And in this case, I had to put quite a few layers in some cases to get to do that. But it was mostly watercolor on there, and then I just brought in the gouache for the
So are you using the gouache for the light values?
Yeah, so like so I basically sketched out I did the wing. This was probably Payne's gray or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I came in with some for the vein. And the color didn't quite end up matching what it was in real life, but at that point we had to go. So
that's cool.
I'm like,
that's
I'm not
really
going to try and match the exact real life color.
What?
I'm just trying to get to know the thing.
And
for this
really
part
cool.
here, this is mostly gouache there. So we're getting there. We're getting there. We're not best friends yet, but we'll be close. So I have all kinds of adventures.
Oh, Susan, thank you so much for sharing that. It's fun to sort of think about your process and also just your unbridled curiosity. What is it? The insatiable curiosity.
There we go.
All right.
Well, it helps that there's all kinds of interesting places to go and things to see. So
excellent. So I'm going to bring in Avea here.
Hey there.
Susan, thank you so much for those observations. Avea, what's going on in your notebooks? Or what are
So,
you thinking about?
so definitely some things going on. And also there's a phenomenon that I'm going to have to start documenting. Um, I think some folks know about the whole flooding thing that happened in my basement and the roof leaking. And so we recently got confirmation because suddenly the leaks began coming in places that they hadn't been before and not from the roof. So we got confirmation that the foundation is leaking. And it's
Is
interesting.
the water table coming up?
That's what I don't know. I don't know if it's that the water table's coming up or what, but I'm able to actually see water coming in through a tiny little crack in one of the spots, and which is why I'm excited to read this book. That
Oh,
a certain somebody might have recommended to me a while ago.
fun.
From the Exploratorium, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's a different book. Either way, this is going to be a fun
No,
book.
this is more comprehensive than the one that I was aware of. This is cool.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that there was more than one book. Okay, I'm going to have to find out what your book is too. But so I'm going to have to document that. It's been very interesting just seeing how fast the water is flowing because it flows into a sump pump and where it's coming from. So I'm trying to think of some fun experiments to figure out exactly where the cracks are and then how to mark them on the walls where I can find them. So I'm going to probably be doing that because the cracks are right near the floor level. So the floor's here, the wall's here, and then the cracks are right in here. And so it's going to be interesting trying to figure out what's going on.
I've got two kind of initial hits on this. The first is, I'm sorry that there are, leaks kind of creeping into your basement, and just how amazing it is that your response to this is you're greeting it with some curiosity and wondering about things, and that is next level, because when something like, it's invading my personal space, this is my castle, you cannot be here, oh leak, but you're like, oh, what are you doing? I think that is really an amazing framing.
Thank you.
I think that's very cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Although, disclaimer, because our basement is the home of apparently the supernatural, not really. Our vents in our apartment, which have not worked for the past 10 years, abruptly began turning on. So sudden cold gusts of air. And I know that it's from the basement because I can smell the basement and the gusts. And that was one thing, but now they go off well, not right now, but at nighttime when I'm trying to sleep, they go off every minute. And so
there's something in the vent going
all night and making loud roaring noises. Yep, all night. So I am definitely still very interested in what's happening in the basement, but warning, part of it might also be sleep deprivation.
Aha.
I have not slept for the past 3 nights.
It's interesting, but not quite a feature.
No, but I am very interested to find out more about the cracks. Like, I want to know exactly where the water table is and the history of the Arroyo Dolores, because it used to flow underneath where I live, according to I don't know where I have it, but Rebecca Solnit's Atlas of San Francisco. So I'm like, ooh, Arroyo Dolores, hello history.
That's really cool.
Makes me happy.
So if you start digging in your basement, you can daylight the creek.
Yes, although I'm not sure that's recommended by building code standards, but that would be fun. I kind of want to save the water that keeps coming in, but okay, I won't get too crazy, but I kind of want to save the water that's coming in and just like experiment and find out what's in that water.
Wouldn't it be interesting to put different colored dyes into different sources around you and see what colors come out in your house? What is the path that is taking?
I was thinking about that, about trying to put, but I never thought about doing that like upstairs in here. Like I was thinking about doing it at different parts of the basement and then seeing where the water is flowing from and then marking those spots down and being like, right here, that's where the dye was like doing a weird thing, and then trying to draw the patterns. Plus then it's easier to draw water when the water is fun colors.
Check out the curiosity on Avea. That's amazing. That's really cool. I like that.
Thank you. I love this is the community that lets me be this way.
Yeah.
I love you all. Y'all are my people. And then if y'all don't mind, I'll try to be fast.
No. Take your time.
Okay. I just wanted to share just a few updates about Monoceros too. So I'd put my map in of my work sites. I haven't finished yet. I started it out with the same quote that I do. If you look around and see a problem and no one else is doing anything about it, you're elected, because I'm very fond of that quote. And this is sort of the view from where I start my site work. And so I'm not done with this yet, but I've been slowly adding landscape ethos to the front, sort of like a reverse index. So that way, if somebody is, if I write in my journal, oh, I was at Xerxes Playground, and somebody might, say, oh, well, there's Xerxes Playground right there, but maybe I'm exhausted and don't have time to draw the landscape, then somebody can look and be like, oh, that's Xerxes Playground, in case anybody picks up my notebook and sees. And so
yeah. And the values that you have on that little Xerxes Playground one really make that little landscape ethos thing. Really strong values in there. Like drawing, folks, think about this. Drawing little clumpy vegetation globule things and having them feel like they have depth and structure is really challenging to do. And these feel like they have volume to them. They really feel like there's volume there.
Thank you.
That's really, that's working for me.
Thank you. Thank you. And so I'm slowly adding the landscape ethos, or sometimes trying to draw them and then realizing that I got the proportions all silly. And that's fine. That's part of the fun of it. So I've got my boxes set up. I've got to do about 15 more landscape ethos.
Just hold up that last page there. And actually the other one. Yes. So notice that just by giving herself a bunch of these frames and intentionally varying the spacing and the sizing of them, I'm thinking that this didn't just happen, that you were doing this on purpose.
Yes.
And this is it makes for really interesting composition. We tend to have things same size and evenly spaced. Your brain, if it's doing the default mode, will do that for you. But here, it makes for a really interesting composition because of this the variation that is in here. Sort of the spaces. Look at the spaces between these. Do you see how that's different? So not just the objects themselves, but the spaces between them. And you're thinking like, why is this important? Because this is the fundamental if you want to improve the compositions in your drawings, if you wrap your head around this idea, it's going to work for you. I'm now going to pull, based on this, I'm going to pull a book off my shelf here and I'll read a quote from it.
Ooh. Yeah.
That you are doing. And come on, book. Oh, this shelf really wants to get better organized.
I volunteer.
That would be really fun. Let's set that up. If you come help me organize my bookshelf, I will buy the burritos.
You've got yourself a deal.
Okay, all right, that'll be fun. Let me see here. Give me 20 more seconds to see if I can put my hand on it. Come on, book. Come on, book. It's gonna be...
Thank you, everybody, for the kind comments. I see some people said some really kind things in the chat. Thank you.
And, I'm shut out.
Oh no, you can't find your. Oh, I know that pain.
Nope, it didn't happen again. I'm striking out today. Oh, here it is. Here it is. All right. So this is one book where the title of it has kind of a like that just sounds like clickbait title, but the book actually comes through. It's called The Simple Secret of Better Painting. And you're thinking, huh. And then right up at the start of the book, the person makes this it has this one kind of simple idea, and then the rest of the book is showing all the applications of that and sort of where this comes from. So this person's idea is never make two intervals the same. Never make two intervals the same. And so the interval in this, it can be the shape of the thing, it can be the size of the thing, it can be spacing between things, and this person kind of goes on to kind of graphically show all these different sort of examples of where people are making the intervals the same, and then the impact of varying that, and how that becomes more interesting. Really useful diagrams. The best book I've ever seen on composition. And so you don't have your intervals are different, and it's just, this is so Greg Albert would like your composition, I think.
Thank you. And thank you for showing that book, because that's exactly the sort of thing I need help with, is one of the areas, like, I'm glad that it worked out well in my Landscapito pages. I've been trying to figure out how to organize my information in the rest of my journals going forward when it comes to my restoration work. Because I'm having a hard time making it coherent and also visually interesting, because I mean, if it's visually interesting, more people are going to want to know about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to have to check out that book. So thank you. So I've finally made my list of plants, except that instead of it being like in the back of my notebook, like it was in the first monoceros, I've put it in the front, and I've separated them out by native versus introduced. And my reasoning for that is that if I can see about who's flowering, and then I noticed that, for example, suppose there's a time period where there's a lot fewer native pollinators that are flowering, and then, obviously sleep deprived. If there are fewer native plants flowering for the pollinators, but then there are a ton of the introduced ones, then I'm going to ask questions about my process of removing the introduced ones and how that's going to affect the pollinators. So I want to make sure
that's fun.
That I have this data, especially because of what you said about, like within our book, Psychology of Intelligence Analysis, that it's harder to notice the absence of things sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a great way of noticing when something's missing, when somebody is missing.
And something that I'm also noticing as you're doing this, you are setting up, you're collecting data and structuring it in a way that is going to let you explore a specific question. Sometimes people will collect data for data's sake, and then we don't know what to do with it. But you're thinking ahead of, what do I want to know? So how do I collect that information in a way that's going to let me retrieve it? That's really smart. That's really, really smart.
Thank you. I'm gradually trying to figure out similar things to do with the other pages. What I'm doing right now is I'm going through this and the other monoceros and trying to write down what common themes are that within my pages. So wildlife notes tend to be some of them. I added these later on these borders because I'm trying to get better at sort of chunking pages in, and then eventually I might start adding colored backgrounds to some of them as well, as soon as I find a way to do it that it doesn't smear. Or like this one, I was trying to play with how to say that these are the bird songs that I heard. So this was kind of a fun little visual. And so it's a combination of the interesting thing about it is that I wind up doing homework sometimes and then field work others, and I'm trying to sort of find where the two meet. So, oh yeah, crab spider. And so like this was an example of me trying to do a page layout, and then over here as well. But then the thing is that because the text is all the same color, then it doesn't really stand out. So I was thinking about maybe making a border around this one that says, you know, poetry moment or something like that. Or then this could be like notes about the work. But I'm trying to think about ways of, so it's for me, it's gonna be a long process because I've got a lot of figuring things out to do, and I always appreciate any advice as well. But that's a thing that I'm gonna try to do more of, or trying to do more maps, and then numbering where I went that day and what we were doing. Also, then that way it makes it easier to come back and do work that we didn't finish, like in area. Actually, I want to say both areas. Actually, you know what? To my recollection, all three of these areas still have grubbing I need to do. I need to go remove some more roots.
Oh, this is, I mean, just the thinking and look at how sort of the thinking, the organization on these pages. Each one is so different. You've got such a wide suite of journaling tools at your brain's disposal. This is really cool. Like I'm seeing landscapes, I'm seeing a little life size there. I'm seeing maps. I'm seeing stage, 1, 2, 3s. You're really using these thinking tools so dynamically in here.
Thank you.
That's fun. This is fun. This is inspiring.
Thank you. I'll just show a few more pages. This was that banana slug friend I was talking about. So I was holding banana slug friend in my left hand and sketching with my right. Then later on, I sketched, I took pictures and I sketched more later on in my other journal. But yeah, this was the banana slug friend. I also saw a salamander that day, but the salamander was moving too fast to draw. So I took a video and did that. And then this is what I was mentioning the other day about the clayey soil versus the sandy soil. And when you're pulling out the taproots with the clayey soil, it's more likely to snap off if they're very young. And so trying to figure out how to do that. Let's see here, how to deal with that.
So what's going on with the yellow lines?
In that case, I was trying to sort of break up the flow of my text because I know that these books are really text heavy. And so I thought that, saying which stop I'd like, because I'd gone to 3 different little mini sites that day. So I thought at least then it could sort of separate out the mini sites from
okay. Great.
But I'd like to do more little sketches in the margins so that it's easier to find my text. So like this one, work smarter, not harder, but then what exactly was I saying this in response to? It'd be nice if I could draw that. So just things I'm going to try to work on. Seedlings, more seedlings. And then this was the area that I was talking about where I'm doing the experiment about pulling out the seedlings and leaving the rest of the bike path alone. So I drew the 2 plants that it was in between. These are really huge plants that aren't going anywhere at the moment. And then I also made a note somewhere in here that there is a, this particular plaque. Oh wait, no, that's a stick. Never mind. Okay, my apologies. My notes are not what I remember them.
Oh no, this is neat. Again, all these different strategies. And look at this, the micro reading pro con.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Like, so all your thinking is happening here on the pages of this. That's huge. This is reminding me of that in the spy book, The Psychology of Intelligence Analysis, where they talked about Ben Franklin's letter. And the Benjamin Franklin, who we all kind of think of as this, smart cookie, right? Wrote in this letter to a friend about how to make better decisions, and suggested making these pro-con lists, and talked about how when you make a list, your brain then just knows how to add more things to it, and then you end up kind of later on doing the better thinking because of this process. There's some Ben Franklin going on right on the pages of these books too. This is really cool. It's like getting to lift the lid off your skull and kind of look inside your brain. This is fun.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me share all of this. I can I can share more another time. That was the birthday one that I was showing earlier, and so then I've got to go back, and next time I'm planning to work on Domino Hill, and I've got some ideas about where I'm going to go. But I wanted to share something that was fun. Speaking of psychology of intelligence analysis, a fun thing that kind of got me to rethink. So I use Merlin Bird app IDs so that way I can hear the songs of birds and then later on draw them and try to learn them that way. And so at one point, it had captured a song that said, I hope I wrote the name down. I want to say it was Blue Gray Gnatcatcher. And so I thought, I hadn't seen that one in iNaturalist listings. I hadn't really seen, and so I thought they're probably wrong about that. But out of curiosity, I decided to look it up. And this is the one that I think of as being the Frida Kahlo bird. They're so
I love that. The Frida Kahlo bird.
They're so cute. And the funny thing though is that I then later on I got a sign that I might have been wrong about just dismissing them. Oh, also banana slug friend from pictures.
Oh, look at the glossiness on that slug. You get real sense of the texture of that.
So that was fun just because they're adorable. And then salamanders.
Oh.
But so what had happened was that I assumed that I was wrong, or rather I assumed that Merlin Bird app was wrong about the blue-gray gnatcatcher. And then I went on to iNaturalist and expanded my search to all of the Presidio. It turns out that there has been something like 6 sightings in the past 7 years, and 3 of them were this year.
Oh, go little birdie. I wonder if that's because of more people using the app. Is it because of more birds? Is it so is it a reporting phenomenon or a bird phenomenon? That's cool.
I was wondering the same thing. I was thinking like how many more people are using it now versus 7 years ago.
Right.
But it's still amazing that this
Yeah.
bird is, I guess, considered for the Presidio. Maybe it's rare. Maybe it is. Because only that.
And you may be creating habitat for this little.
It just makes me so happy. So now I hope I someday get to see adorable Frida Kahlo bird.
Yes, that would be good. That would be really good. That's so much fun. Wow, these are really rich journal entries.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
It looked like Shannon had raised her hand a second ago.
I saw that. That hand just disappeared. Now I'm not seeing it. Hello. And oh, Shannon's back. Let's bring Shannon in. Hold on a second.
I think, Shannon, you have to turn on your camera so that we can spotlight you.
Or Shannon, you can now unmute if you. Oh, there we go. Add you into the spotlight. Hello. Wait, hold on. Try to unmute one more time.
Okay, how's that?
Perfect.
Okay, Ivea, that was incredibly inspiring. The scientific, approach that you're using in your journaling is really, really inspiring. I'm not doing that kind of journaling, but I do like to track, the development of things and so on. But I also wanted to flip back to the theme of not just today's work with Jack, but in general, our work with Jack on animals and various things. And again, this flips back to, some prior lifetimes of mine. So it's not about journaling per se, but it's more about, and I've got sunlight showing right now, it's more about how to work with the gesture of the animals to capture the movement. Okay, let's see. So there's kind of a horse, a zebra, sort of a creature there, an angry cat, an angry lion, and that whole process of working with, the boxes and things I'm not sure, that might have been a cheetah there attempt, and that was a lying down donkey or something. And as you can see, I sketch on all kinds of just whatever scrap paper I have around. I don't, I just grab whatever's there. So I don't really have a good record of a cohesive record of work that I do particularly. But I thought in terms of, Jack, what you were showing about working with skeleton and working with, the blocking forms, and then how to, carry that into the actual, development of the animal. And here's an example of a skeletal effort on a gazelle.
Yes.
And also just the framing, how you frame it to get the action, activity of the animal. And of course, the use of this curve and the straight line. A lot of this work I did out of, again, studying other artists' instructional books. And I think it's just, just a wonderful thing that we have the opportunity to work with so many fine people through the books that they've promoted, that they've put together of their journey and their work. It's this one here. So, and then also this, for example, was some zoo drawing done with, I was a visitor to a class at the Atelier in San Diego, run by Jeff Watts. And he was taking his group of students, Heather was a student there at that time, to the zoo for live drawing. And this is the first time I learned about the core shadow. So, and of course, Jack, you have talked about these shadows and the muscular shadows and things showing up many times since then. So it was quite a fun event and quite challenging to try to draw live, the animals at
What fun. Yeah.
And then to have fun in different times, like this is the camel's foot.
Wow.
So, having lots of fun like that, doing live drawing. So I'm really excited for all of you who are going to be, in Africa soon, to have that chance to really try to capture the animals in their motion and in their habitat, and, as they're doing all the various whatever funny things. I mean, not all my sketches are good, by the way, of course, but here was a camel lying down, and other African animals, at the zoo, just hanging out, doing the thing that they do, whatever that is, and then just some various, kind of studies of, the shapes and stature of some of those different animals. So I just thought, it might be fun to kind of just share a little bit of that for those of you who are heading off to for such an exciting adventure. That whole process of working.
Thank you for sharing that. This is
that whole process of working with your basic forms, and then also finding the gestural movement in the animal. Like, what's the line of the movement? How are they having their activity manifested in a visceral way, visually visceral, in your capture. So that's all. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much for sharing those. Those are some really inspiring sketches and things. I put into the chat, you're mentioning kind of really useful books on drawing and sketching animals. I put in a link to a PDF of Joe Weatherly's animal drawing book. You give that one a big thumbs up?
Yep.
Brilliant.
You recognize it. You probably recognized his influence in this work. Yeah, directly, some of it directly out of that book.
Really useful book. I recommend people get a hard copy of it. I put in a VSS, also Weatherly. It's awesome. Oh, look at that. Right there on hand. Bam, just like that. There's a Joe book.
Yeah.
So this is an exquisite book on drawing mammals, and I've learned a lot from this person's strategies and approaches, and I do recommend getting a hard copy of this one, but we put a link to it in a link to a PDF into the chat, and you can. But this is this is good strategies.
There's also another book that I found incredibly useful and helpful for me. And naturally, I mean, I don't remember the name of it, but Heather will. And if she's still on, or maybe you have it there. No, but Tim Pond is wonderful. And no, it's a fellow
the other one, there's one other book that is crazy cool on drawing mammals.
So the one I'm thinking of, I believe he was originally and maybe I'm confusing Weatherly with this other fellow, and I don't know if Heather's still on, but I'm sure next week she'll post it, the name of the other book, if you're not finding it, Jack. But nope, he's
by Jack
period.
Ham?
What is it?
Is it the Jack Ham book?
No, he's from the period of the original artists at Disney, back when they did all of that work by hand and they used, that fancy pencil was the drawing tool of the day. Heather would have quipped in by now if she's still on. So.
William D. Barry?
Oh, wait, who is it?
William D. Barry?
No, it's okay.
He actually did work at Disney for a little while.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't think it was Barry. And I have passed some of my books along to grandchildren and so on who were showing interest in art and that sort of thing. So I don't think I have that book anymore, although I sadly miss it. And so when I get the title of it, I will make sure that that it's shared for anyone who's interested. I mean, if you really want to expand, I'm not, a great artist at all, but I totally love practicing these things that that bring charisma to what you're drawing, and so it goes up maybe a step beyond the quick nature journaling, but actually for whoever it was that was talking about wanting to slow down and sketch more carefully. Of course we want to sketch carefully, but there's also some things, much that can be lost by just not doing gestural. Working with gesture is so key, in my opinion. And, of course, there are hundreds of different opinions about these things, but that happens to be my opinion.
I think that it's good to switch it up and just do different techniques, different strategies, and not any one, because then that means that you have a wider variety of tools for different situations. Like
Absolutely.
the other day, Marley was showing a video of himself sketching in a tree, with a harness, like dangling, and there he is and sketching. And I noticed that he happened to be using a lot of continuous line when he was doing that. And I asked if it had something to do with the whole tree, and he's like, just economy of movement. And so you have that. But then when you're like looking at something that maybe is really small under a microscope, then you are wanting to sketch all of the fine details really carefully. And so it's like, I like the idea of just doing more than one. And why, and this is not to call you out, Shannon, but it's just to wonder, why do we always say that we're not artists or that we're not good artists? I have the same problem.
I mean, it hasn't been my career. I didn't pursue it to the depth that it would have taken for it to have been a career path. I think I could have if I had had that opportunity in my life to stay with that training. But as I mentioned earlier, my life took various other trajectories, so I just enjoy it here and there. But I agree with you. Absolutely. We're all good with the fact that we try makes us, in that category that we're.
And also, I think it's about the experience that we have doing it rather than the product that is made at the end.
Exactly. I was looking around just in case I had this other book out. Oh yeah, here she is. And you may know this woman too. And again, it's all about this, the charisma of the action. Can you make out her name?
Stuart.
It's backwards for me. Let me see. No, the gal is oh, what's Windling. Windling is her name. She's a pretty famous artist.
Oh, show us some of the pictures from inside there. Oh, wow. That's fun.
Let's see what else might be hiding in here. Of course, like the artist that used to work for Disney, she can also carry some of this stuff into a cartoony, interpretation. This is not one of those pages. But then she does do that, like Aaron Blaze and some of the others who have done work for cartoon, capture the
yeah,
capture
that's
the
fun.
essence, but bring it into that kind of that other category. And of course her work also goes into kind of the video gaming kind of stuff, really massive, wild and crazy creatures and and so on. Anyway, she's pretty inspiring in that way that I'm mentioning of just capturing the gesture of the animal in the charisma of their motion.
That's
And
really
it's
fun.
not for nature journaling, I'm sure. I mean, you'd have to be really, really skillful at doing that for the nature journaling to carry that with the time constraint that we're mostly faced with in trying to sketch them live right out there on the field. But those are good skills to keep working on the side for those of you who do still have the time in your life for that.
So since we're on the subject of books, I thought I pulled off a few little books off my shelf. Vea already held up, again, this one, the Weatherly Guide to Drawing Animals, 5 out of 5 stars, knock it out of the park, amazingly good book. The other one that absolutely rocks my hot sauce is this one that looks like just sort of a cheap kind of book for kids on the cover. How to Draw Animals by Jack Ham. Book is brilliant. Really, 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 really dense with information and strategies and examples and lots of illustrations sort of showing what this person is thinking and how they're constructing things, and it is dense and worth every page. So those two are my top two. Another interesting one is this Artist's Guide to Animal Anatomy, an illustrated reference to drawing animals. And this one has some very useful visualizations of how critters are put together, and a number of different drawing styles, but also then gets into anatomy and sort of constructivist drawings that are useful. It's a little bit more, I would say, technical, but also a useful book. These two are kind of old classics that have just been around for a long time and have it's all kind of heavy on text, but is a useful one. This one here is similar, animal drawing anatomy action for artists. It is it's these sort of very anatomical approach. The two that I just love the most, my top two. Here's one other wildlife drawing one. This is a more recent one, and this person has a a neat kind of way of chunking out shapes that I really appreciate. But again, my top two are Jack Ham's book and the Weatherly Guide for Drawing Animals. So those are useful things to look at. Now,
So
with that, what?
Just one last comment. As it turns out, well, Heather's back on now, but she is going to search out the other one that I've been referring to. And every one that you've shown are actually in my library as well, and I have dabbled with them over time as well. And I can't recommend any of them enough. They're all excellent. So thanks for sharing those, Jack. I think it's good for everyone to know what the good references are.
Yeah, and once I get my if I can get my shelf there organized, yeah, we might be able to pull out a few more. There's a few others that I'm aware of, but I'm not seeing them. It would take longer to find them on the bookshelf.
Yeah.
So with that, dear friends, we're going to call this 1 hour workshop to a close. And thank you all for being here with us. And I hope that you had fun today, that you enjoyed some of these, you got some strategies that will help you, and some inspiration from the work of our friends and peers. I want to also send a special shout out and thanks to Avea Moore, my co-host, for helping manage these and for sharing your restoration diary so generously. That was really fun. Folks, thank you all so much. We will see you around. Be kind, be curious. Let's get out there and take a risk with our journal. It's going to be okay. And have some fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack.